Welcome to Physio World. Start learning with me. Today we are going to discuss about muscles of shoulder region. So for knowing muscles of shoulder region, we have to know about the shoulder joint anatomy. And for knowing about the muscle, we have to know about the origin, where the muscle is originating and where it is inserting. So we can tell as insertion, and then what nerve it is supplying for action, and then what is the action. So shoulder joint anatomy, here you can see there's a scapula, there's a humerus. So head of the humerus will be articulating with the cavity of the glenoid cavity of the scapula. Okay, so here you can see head of the humerus articulate with the glenoid cavity of the scapula, which will form glenohumeral joint. And as the structure itself, we can understand it is a ball and socket synovial joint. What are the movements takes place in shoulder region? Flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, lateral rotation, medial rotation, and circumduction. So these are the main movements which is occur in the shoulder region. What are the muscles of shoulder joint? So one is deltoid, rotator cuff, teres major. So what are the rotator cuff muscle? Sits. We can simply say that is sits. S-I-T-S. S for supraspinatus, I for infraspinatus, T for teres minor, subscapularis, and then teres major. Okay, so these are the muscles of shoulder joint. So first we can say deltoid. Here in this picture you can clearly see there is an anterior fiber, medial fiber, and posterior fiber. So from where the anterior fiber is originating. So anterior border of the adjoining surface of the lateral one third of the clavicle. So as the picture itself we can understand, here is the clavicle. So lateral one third of the clavicle, from the anterior fiber is originating, and from where the middle fiber is originating, lateral border of the acromion process. So acromion process, here it is this, so the lateral border of the acromion process, the middle fiber is originating. Posterior fiber, we can see here the spine of the scapula. So lower lip of the crest of the spine of the scapula. This is the origination of the posterior fiber of the deltoid muscle. All this muscle is inserting to the deltoid tuberosity. So we can say insertion is deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. What is the nerve supply? Axillary nerve. Action. So here three fibers. Those three fibers have different action. One is anterior fiber. For anterior fiber, flexion and medial rotation, and then middle fiber abduction, posterior fiber extension, and lateral rotation. So these are the main functions of deltoid muscle. Now we can see spinatus. So here's the scapula, you can see posterior part of our body. Here's the scapula. There's two fossa, supraspinous fossa and infraspinous fossa. So from supraspinous fossa, medial two-third of the supraspinatus fossa of the scapula. So from the supraspinatus muscle is originating, and where it is insertion. Here's the greater tubercle. Okay, so there is three impression: upper, middle, and lower. So upper impression on the greater tubercle of the humerus is responsible is the for supraspinatus insertion. Okay. So origin is medial two-third of the supraspinatus fossa of the scapula. Insertion, upper impression on the greater tubercle of the humerus. What is the nerve supply? Nerve supply, as the name itself, suprascapular nerve. And the action. So initial 0 to 15 degree, the supraspinatus muscle is responsible for shoulder abduction and then continuation. So it steadies the humeral head during the movements. And next one is infraspinatus muscle. So here's the infraspinatus fossa. Medial two-third of the origin is medial two-third of the infraspinatus infraspinous fossa of the scapula. Origin is medial two-third of the origin is medial two-third of the infraspinous fossa of the scapula, where it is insertion. Middle impression. So I told there's three impression on the greater tubercle: upper, middle, and lower. For upper impression, there's a supraspinatus, and the middle impression there's a infraspinatus muscle is inserting. And nerve supply suprascapular nerve. Action is lateral rotation of the scapula. So infraspinatus muscle action is lateral rotation of the arm. Now teres minor. What's the origin? So here's the dorsal surface of the scapula. So upper two-third of the dorsal surface, that to lateral border of the scapula. So here, okay. So from there, teres minor is originating and it is inserting into the lowest impression on the greater tubercle. So lower impression on the greater tubercle, teres minor is inserting. Nerve supplies axillary nerve. Action is lateral rotation of the arm. Now we are discussing about the subscapularis muscle. Okay, so here there is subscapular fossa on the costal surface of the scapula. So origin is medial two-third of the subscapular fossa of the scapula. Insertion is on the lesser tubercle. Remaining three muscle which is inserting on the greater tubercle, which is on the upper, middle, and lower impression. And then nerve supplies upper and lower subscapular nerve. Action is medial rotator and adductor of arm. Okay, so that medial rotator and adductor of arm. Now we are discussing about the teres major muscle. So here is the last muscle, teres major muscle. For that origin is lower one-third of the, so upper two-third is for teres minor and lower one-third of the dorsal surface of lateral border and inferior angle of the scapula. The teres major is originating, and this insertion is, here is the bicipital groove which is present on the humerus. So medial lip of the bicipital groove of the humerus, the teres major is inserting, and the nerve supply is lower subscapular nerve. Action is medial rotation and adductor of arm.